Hello everyone. I know it's been a little while since I've been in front of a camera, but I've been trying to find a good filming location now that I'm at college. I've been going to college for a couple years, but I recently transferred. You can see where I go now. And it's taken me a little while to try to find a place where I can really just sit down, be alone, have a camera, and I'm still working on it slightly, so this isn't necessarily a permanent thing. It's obviously not my usual location. In fact, I think this might be the first video I have ever made where I'm not in my room. But anyway, the reason I'm making this video is to talk about football video games specifically. And I know I've uploaded a couple videos recently of me playing a really old NCAA football game. It's from EA Sports, it's NCAA 04. I just really like it. There are numerous reasons that I play the older ones, and we'll probably get into that in a different video, but the basic reason that I play such an old one is that it has a lot of schools in it that the newer ones don't. And it's not as glitchy as some of the slightly more recent ones. But the main topic of this video is, now that I've started putting those out, and don't worry, it's not going to be the only thing I do. I'm not going to become all about that or anything. Although, there should be a video coming out in probably a couple weeks of me and one of my friends playing more. But one of the great things about these old games too, and it's carried over to the new ones as well, that people do not give them enough credit for, is that they have role-playing game elements. You know, role-playing games like Final Fantasy, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Skyrim. And it's really weird because there's a division that I've always rejected, but there's this division, or perceived division, between hardcore gamers, and I would count myself as one, and then more casual gamers, or people who play a lot of sports games. I get it to a degree if there's someone you know who only plays Madden. Like someone who got a PlayStation 4 just to play Madden. Like, who does that? So I can understand. But these games have a lot more merit than a lot of people give them credit for. I've heard people, and it annoys the hell out of me, but I've heard people say, completely seriously, that football video games are not real games. To be fair, this person was generally an idiot, not just on this topic. But of course they're games. They have gameplay. They have all the elements that you need to be a basic game. If you think that a racing game, a race car game, or a flight simulator is a video game, why would you think that a football video game is not? Okay, they don't have the most in-depth story typically, but there are role-playing game aspects nonetheless. So for those of you who are entirely unfamiliar with these, basically especially the college level ones, the NCAA games, you can go from one season to another in a mode called Dynasty. I think it may have been a different name in the newer games, but it's been Dynasty for a long time. And in Dynasty mode, you do recruiting every season. It depends on how well you did. And I think this is actually better than a lot of real role-playing games, like Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy, what I mentioned before. And the reason is because there's a lot more merit to it in terms of how you improve your team, which I would say is analogous to leveling up a character in other games. So, for example, if you can create your own schedule to a degree. If you as a player have the skill to create a schedule where your team wins all the time, or at least most of the time, you will be able to recruit better players. You will have people in the off-season who are interested in your team, who are better than, obviously, if you lost every game. And you also have to take into account the strength of schedule, especially if your team is trying to get into one of the more prestigious bowl games. You can't just play every incredibly easy team in the easiest conference and think that you're going to get into the national championship. You can't. So you need to balance these things out, and there's decision making there. So it rewards merit because the player has to have that type of a skill. And then, depending on how you perform in the games, how much you blow out opposing teams, how much you win by, whether you win or lose, whether you get to a bowl game, whether you win rivalries, whether you win a bowl game, there's a lot that goes into it, is my point. And all of these things, every single one of them, influences whether you will be able to recruit the players you want the next season. So basically, the way it's a lot like leveling up, because you can get better players if you do well. You can recruit better players in the off season. But if you do poorly, if you lose every game, first off, you can get fired and you lose. But also, you can actually, theoretically at least, not be able to recruit players who are as good as the ones you currently have. Your team will get worse. So, I think that makes a lot more sense, technically, in terms of the accuracy of role-playing. I mean, if you're playing, like, Fallout, you know, you get enough experience to level up. I understand the system, and it makes sense for most games. But it doesn't really make sense that you would level up, like, two different people would level up the same way. So what I mean is, if you have two people, one of them defeats 10 enemies, and the other one defeats an equivalent 10 enemies, you're not going to gain the exact same thing, because the battles would not have gone the same way. You wouldn't, you know, have analyzed them the same way. The people just aren't going to have equal intelligences. You're not going to learn an equal amount. And no other game really accounts for that. So the way NCAA accounts for the fact that not everyone benefits the same amount from the same experience, and I don't think this was intended as a way to make it a role-playing game or anything like that, but when you recruit, you choose how to recruit. You have to pick out of thousands of potential recruits. You have to pick like 20 or 30 to go after, less sometimes. And even when you narrow it down to who's interested, you have to make the final call as to whether you go after that player who is rated 3 stars and is really interested in your school, or whether you go after the 4-star rated one who is more competitive, where maybe you're number 3 on his list rather than number 1 in terms of where he wants to go. And that's up to you. It's up to the amount of skill and decision-making ability you have. So even if you win the same number of games, by the same margins, against the same opponents as somebody else, you might still do better than them in the off-season. Just because you might have a certain intelligence or a certain skill to choose who you recruit better than they do. And this adds just such a great dynamic nature to every off-season. You know, there's so much at stake. Every week you're like, oh, did someone recruit? Did someone else recruit my people? Did someone commit? What's going on? Because it's so important. There's no guarantee of success that way. You really have to put in effort all the way. And then it's back to creating your next schedule, and you have to weigh everything again. And it goes on season after season. Until eventually, somehow, William and Mary wins the national championship. You know. But I like it because it lends itself to so much more creativity than a normal role-playing game does. A normal role-playing game, you just go up one standard level, and to do it you just have to kill however many opponents or complete whatever quest, gain however much experience. Whereas in these football games, there's a lot more creativity and a lot more places where your merit actually determines how much you improve when you have the opportunity to. So that's why I actually think that some of these older football games, and probably the newer ones as well, I haven't played them as much, are actually better role-playing games than a lot of real role-playing games, and why hardcore gamers should be much more open-minded when it comes to games like this. Alright, that's all I've got to say. Thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.